And did you send me what I asked?
Yeah, I'm gonna be sending it 1 minute.
Oh.
Hey Sam, when you're ready.
Thank you, Rizal. Good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha Isaac, and on behalf of the Southern African Liaison Office, I'd like to welcome you all to today's public multi-stakeholder dialogue under the title Strengthening Civil Society Contributions to Mozambique's Peace Process, Regional Solidarity, and Democratic Resilience. Thank you to all our distinguished panelists and to everyone joining us online for today's discussion. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. Today's meeting is public, so it's a public dialogue and is being recorded. The recording will be made available on our YouTube channel. But after the meeting, for those who are unable to join or those who wish to revisit the discussion, we're also pleased to provide simultaneous interpretation in English and Portuguese. So if you would prefer to listen in either language, please make use of the interpretation function. It is at the bottom of your screen. It says more. And when you click on that, there'll be a bunch of options. You can choose the one with the globe icon that says interpretation. And in terms of the program, we will begin with presentations from our panelists before opening the floor for questions and discussion. We encourage everyone to participate in a respectful and constructive manner, and we look forward to a robust exchange of perspectives. Today's dialogue builds on SALO's previous engagements on Mozambique's national inclusive dialogue and comes at an important moment in the country's evolving peace process. While progress has been made towards fostering dialogue following the contested 2024 general elections, important questions remain about how the process can continue to strengthen democratic participation, reflect the perspectives of civil society, and respond to the broader governance, security, and humanitarian challenges facing the country, including those in Cabo Delgado. These are issues that extend beyond Mozambique's borders and speak to broader questions of peace, democratic resilience, and regional cooperation in Southern Africa. We are pleased to be joined by an excellent panel of speakers who bring with them a wealth of experience from diplomacy, research, civil society, and legal practice. In her absence, I would like to welcome Ambassador Lindiwe Zulu from the ANC executive from the National Executive Committee, and Dr. Zhao Feijo, Senior Researcher and Research Coordinator at the Observatory of Rural Areas, Mr. Borges Namire, Researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Ms. Fidelia Chemane, Executive Director of the Civil Society Learning and Training Center, and Mr. Custodio Duma, a lawyer and independent consultant. Again, welcome everyone, and I will now hand over to my colleague Munjozi, who will be chairing today's session. Thanks again.
Thank you, Samantha, for setting a very solid tone for the dialogue. And let me just welcome colleagues to yet another discussion on this region and on Mozambique as we try to find ways of how to address challenges of peace and instability. And Mozambique, over the past few years, of course, a much longer period, but for us here at SALO, over the past few years, has been a mainstay as a place where we could learn on peace processes, understand Mozambique as a region, and how to build cords of solidarity as a region in terms of advancing um, issues of peace, issues of governance, issues of democracy, and economic well-being of this region. And of course, today, as Samantha has already said, we are joined with an excellent panel of colleagues who are on the core face of the struggle for democracy and peace in Mozambique, people that are on the ground in terms of understanding what's happening. But also we are joined by Ambassador Lindiwe Zulu, who needs no introduction in this platform, a mainstay in building solidarity in this region and a leader of this region. And we're quite happy to have it. I know that we also joined by many other ambassadors in the room, colleagues from the diplomatic corps, colleagues from civil society from across the region. And as is our tradition, we will hear from the speakers first. We'll open up on the second hour, and we will be able to engage directly, all of us, with the speakers in here. I need not repeat what Samantha has said, but we know that Mozambique is undergoing a national dialogue process as a result of the post-election challenges they faced in 2024. And we know that there are phases in the dialogue process. What makes it something to pay attention to at a regional level is that Mozambique has also undergone a conflict in Cabo Delgado in the north. And when these processes are happening in such a complex environment, I think that the process itself becomes complicated. And it's important for us as citizens of this region to learn every day about what's happening on the ground, what strides are being taken towards peace. Is there a role for us from outside to contribute to the processes that are happening? And so let me start with my good brother, Borges Namire, who again, I think has been on this platform before. I think only Fidelia and Custodio have not been on this platform. Fegio has been here. And so we are quite excited to have you back and quite excited to be joined by Fidelia and Custodio as well. But Borges is, I know that those who have been following the Mozambique Times in some few months ago, we know that Borges has been one of the leading people in that platform. But also he has done a number of research work around Mozambique. I have met Borges in other platforms where he was presenting on the situation in Mozambique. And he has been with the ISS for some time. I'm not sure if he is still there, but I'm just saying that Borges is a voice that we have learned to respect and to listen to when it comes to the issues of Mozambique in this region. And Borges, take us through what you want to take us through. What's happening in Mozambique? What's the state of affairs with regard to the national processes that you guys are engaged on? What's the environment like? Yeah, take us through, make us get in your head and understand what you are thinking in July of 2026.
Okay, thank you, Mundozi, for inviting. And
Sorry, Borges. I just want to also say that there is translation. I'm hoping that my colleagues have already highlighted that. And I think that you can choose a channel of the language you want to listen to. So the colleagues from Mozambique, there should be a channel. If you go to where you choose to listen in Portuguese, we have translation. If someone is speaking in English, they will translate it to Portuguese. If a speaker is speaking in Portuguese, they will translate it to English, and colleagues who can't understand Portuguese can also listen in English. I'm lucky I can listen to both without translation. I'm joking. But just please go ahead.
No, thank you, Munjozi. You want me to speak in Portuguese, right?
No,
If you,
I prefer you speak in English, but you are comfortable to do whatever you want.
okay.
It is my preference, but
Okay. I would rather speak in Tsonga, which is my mother tongue. So speaking in Portuguese and English is quite the same European language, which unite us. So no problem. Well, we need to start from the beginning. Why are we here? And why is Mozambique engaging in this national inclusive dialogue, trying to repeat the official terminology? Uh, the short response to that is because of the election rigging. So, election rigging in Mozambique is something that we should not be afraid of saying that it happened, because one of the most transparent way to assess the fairness of election is through observation. So we had in Mozambique elections that were highly observed by both domestic and international missions. So just to mention that almost all domestic observation missions to the election in Mozambique came to the same conclusion that the election were rigged. Then, when we also go to the international observation missions, a part of SADC, which is not issue a statement at all, European Union, which has observed all Mozambique national elections since 1994, also came to the conclusion that the election were rigged. So this is where the problem started, with the rigging of election. The dialogue that was set up first by the former president Nyusi and assumed by the current president Daniel Chapo, both of them from Frelimo, was aiming to different objectives. So what government wanted was to end violence, the violence that emerged following the election rigging. And what opposition wanted was share power, to share power. So, to respond to the central question, is this dialogue going to take us uh, to resolve the problem? Well, the answer will be yes if Mozambique stops rigging election. And who is rigging election in Mozambique? It's not are not the parties, it's the state itself. So the state apparatus are the one who, with the state institution, are the one that are rigging the election. And the different institution has its own role in that project. So starting from the National Electoral Commission, which manipulates from the electoral process, starting from the registration. So they just register people who don't exist. They find the numbers of people uh, uh, in provinces that they don't exist simply, being the most visible case of the Gaza province, where the National Electoral Commission found the extra 300 people, 300,000 people to vote, which was said by the National Institute of Statistics that this figure could only be reached in 2020, in 2040. So not now. So we'll need additional 20 years plus to reach such figures. And then they go keep rigging everything. They never release the results. They never show the result sheets. So the problem is rigging election. I want to repeat what happened. This has been already discussed. It is written. Myself, I published a lot of articles on that. But the problem is rigging election. So is this dialogue going to resolve the rigging of election? If it resolves the problem of rigging of election, then it's going to resolve the problem. If not, then it's just delaying a problem. And in 2028, or more certainly 2029, when we'll have another national election, then we're going to face the same problem. With slight differences that that time the government will be better prepared to repress the protests. Now, the security apparatus was caught in surprise. It was not prepared to such a huge response from young people who demonstrated initially without violence, but then they triggered in violence after the government responded with violence. When I say government, the police, the government security forces. So, and trying to respond to my own question, is this dialogue going to resolve the issue of rigging the election? I think no. Definitely no, because uh, those who rigged the election, they do it because this is the only way that they can keep the power and keep the power in where they want, meaning that they apply the winner takes it all. They control everything. They win in all provinces. They will overwhelming majority in National Assembly. They win in municipalities. So they need that for what? To rule, not. They need that power because this is the only way. This is a kind of job. This is a competition for resource. So if they leave the power or if they reduce the level of power that they have, it means we have families that won't have food. You know, these elite people in Mozambique, they don't work. If you ask them what they do nothing. They don't work. They don't have a profession. They do nothing. Everything that they do is control the state resource and use the state resource the way they want to resolve their personal problems, to send their children study abroad, to pay their health service in the private clinics, to enroll their children in private expensive international schools in Maputo before they are sent abroad. And who is paying that? The taxpayers. And the way that these people can have control of the state resource is controlling the state. So if they leave the power, they are going to lose this all lavish life that they have got, these international travels to Dubai, to everywhere. So this is not a matter of governance. It's a matter of resource. So the way to control resource is to bring the power. And the higher is the number of the seats that a party has got in local assembly, national assembly, it means the higher will be the number of families, the elite families that are included. So is dialogue going to solve the problem? Not this way. Well, is dialogue necessary? Yes, it's necessary, but mostly to say that we have tried. We have tried. I see I only have 2 minutes to go. So what can the region do? Well, the region can watch openly what is happening in Mozambique, but also I think it should request a seat within the national dialogue to understand what's going on. Organization like the Council of Elders in Southern Africa should have a seat within the dialogue where could access everything what is happening, follow everything what is happening, so that when we come to the conclusion, to the end of the dialogue in 2028 or 2029, someone from external organization can say, oh, we witnessed what Mozambicans were discussing. Or other civil society organization. I know Mozambique civil society organization are invited to join dialogue. So I think some regional organizations should also apply, and Mozambique should allow them to join the dialogue room to witness, even if not contributing, but at least witnessing what is happening from the beginning up to now. Because otherwise, we'll be here accusing one each other, and before we're starting to kill one each other, as happened in 2024, 2025. And in the 20 seconds that I have left with, I would like to say that the problem is not resolved in Mozambique. As we're speaking now, there's still people being killed, this targeted killing, because of their roles, the role they played in the post-election protests. So while Mozambican leaders the ruling party and opposition, they have committed to resolve the problem. The killings of innocent people is still happening as we're talking now. So if we go look to the news, see what happened like 2 months ago, we say that we have people who have been targeted and killed. And these people are the member of opposition party. And this is something that is not new. So we need as a country to refrain from killing one each other if we really want to engage in a faithful dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Borges. I think they are very worrying. The picture you paint, and I think it reinforces some of the things that keep coming in these dialogues. That people have no trust and confidence in the institutions, in the processes, and particularly electoral processes. People do not believe that those processes will bring about um, results that reflect the will of the Mozambican people. And I think that that's the question that the dialogue process in part should be seized with, but we also know that the issues of violence are central, as you pointed, and the worry that even as the dialogue is happening, we still pick reports of sections of society in Mozambique saying that they are being targeted, people are still being killed, and I think that that presents a challenge to the success of the dialogue process itself. But thank you for setting us on, and let me bring in the second speaker. Again, the good doctor, João Feijo, who is with the Observatory of Rural Areas in Mozambique. We have had him, I think, a couple of times on this platform, 3 or so years ago. And we know that, Doc, you have been working on issues of public policy with regards to issues of peace, local governments, natural resources governance, but also on understanding the causes and drivers of the conflict in the northern provinces of Mozambique. Of course, the issues that Borges touched on, particularly electoral issues, are issues that you have engaged with. I wanted you to, without me being prescriptive of what you should say, just ask you to come in and take us through what you think we should be understanding as of today in Mozambique as we build towards how we can be able to contribute to Mozambique. Doc, please do come in.
Good morning, Unjosi. Good morning, Borges, Duma, and Fidelia. Um, and thanks for this invitation. After the presentation of Borges, I don't know, it's starting to be difficult for me to not repeat what he said, but I took some notes and I will try to complement him. He said, he explained in a very good way how the electoral system in Mozambique is implemented in a way that it is uh, politically controlled, and it does not allow an opposition party to come to power. Actually, elections are held to allow opposition parties to compete, but not to win elections. And as everyone knows, Mozambique experienced it in the last quarter of 2024, a series of popular uprisings, probably the most intense in Mozambique since the civil war. The revolts involved a wide range of people. It includes informal workers in urban areas, students, women and domestic workers, peasants, especially those ones affected by extractive industry, artisanal miners, and also the middle classes. So it involved public employees, teachers, nurses, um, including members of the security forces in a more timid way, workers in urban centers from the formal sector, including traders, formal sector traders, so the Indians who come uh, to the streets to protest against corruption, kidnaps, and so on. Um, the presented problems by the populations were mainly related with lack of employment, uh, precarious wages, of course, social inequalities between foreigners and nationals, inefficiency of public services and corruption, and access to natural resources. If we look to what people were shooting in the streets, it was mainly related with these pragmatic issues, economic issues related with state efficiency, to access to resources. So land, mineral resources, timber, uh, salaries, and jobs mainly. Venancio Mondian had a very strong, uh, uh, assertive political discourse with uh, with the sentence "Este país é nosso," this country is ours. It was a very a populist way to exploit this popular insatisfaction and people's feelings of revolt. And it could be any Che Guevara of this life. It could be Samara Machel, Jacama, or whatever. It was Venancio Mondlane who had this charisma and was able to paralyze the country. So the inclusive national dialogue arrived in this context. It mainly had two, three objectives. The first one was a way to channel street protests into conference centers and allow some uh, normality to the country, restoring confidence in the economy and to the investors. Secondly, it was a way to bring legitimacy to these elected governments in a context that no one was recognizing the authority to the government, including at an international level. And third, it was a way to attract funds, international funds from IMF, from the from the embassies, and act also capturing civil society organizations to adopt a more collaborative attitudes with the government and promote somehow social cohesion uh, among the middle classes. It was a way to absorb middle classes to a conference room, and through sharing economical funds. Um, the main aspects of the problem remained unaddressed, as somehow Borges explained. First of all, Venancio Mondlane, the individual who personifies the protests, is not formally included in the package. Uh, Secondly, at the same time, there is a talk of inclusive national dialogue. For months, the security services, the sinister security forces, have murdered dozens of young opposition leaders across the country in the face of the silence of the Attorney General. At the same time, there is this talk to consolidating the rule of law and democracy. In Cabo Delgado, for instance, an investigation to human rights violation in Afungi remains unconducted. And Chapo already announced that there was an investigation and didn't come to any conclusion. And it's not coherent to what people in the field say. Uh, so, on the other hand, I was in Nampula last month, and I realized that during working hours, Frelimo party structures continue to meet using public resources, strengthening the reconstruction, the political reconstructions of the political basis in order um, to oppose to the growing strength of the opposition parties. So, as I was saying, the core of the issue continues to be discussed. The politicization of the state, to separate the state from the party. This should be the main issue that should be discussed. And it's still a taboo. Um, Secondly, access to state resources, access to mines, access to lands. It continues to be debated. There is a strong competition uh, uh, across the country between artisanal miners, peasants, and formal companies who compete from the same resources. The first ones, the second ones, many times are related to high ranked people in the ruling party, very close to the political bureau of Frelimo. So this is a taboo to discuss. There are some timid discussions, we have to recognize it, some timid discussions related with tax reforms and diversification of economy. We are facing that in some national, in a nationalist way of seeing economy. But these problems have to be discussed at the regional level. Issues related with extractivism, with migration, with a model of development based on corridors, international corridors. It has to be discussed at the regional level. But these international corridors provide logistic businesses to the ruling party of Mozambique, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and they are comfortable. Many of them are also partners in extractive industry businesses and in competition with local peasants, as I said. Um, Meanwhile, the government is trying to gain time. The population in Mozambique continues to grow. Every year, hundreds of thousands of young people enter to the job market without employment. Now, with the xenophobic attacks in South Africa, thousands of Mozambicans are returning, increasing the ranks of unemployment in Mozambique. El Nino phenomenon will provoke droughts in the next 2 or 3 years, which means that in the next 28 and 29, 2028 and 2029 elections, population will vote hungry. So the government is reluctant to implement reforms. The IMF reforms. So the IMF funds are not coming. The gas revenues will also take time to come. So the government doesn't have nothing to give to doesn't have ideas and capacity change, and just want to gain more time. So the plan is to postpone municipal elections from 28 to 29 in order to prevent the opposition from winning municipalities in 2028 and strengthening itself for the 2029 presidential elections. There is also this attempt to extend the presidential term from 5 years to 7 years, and the attempt to criminalize the self-proclamation of electoral victory without first reforming the aspects that allow fraud. So this is an attempt to entertain the most critical and interventive civil society actors without the courage, political courage, to make the necessary changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Joao, for that solid input. I think reinforcing some of the things that Borges has put on the table. I think that borders again on the mistrust and lack of confidence on the state and its capacity to really do what citizens expect it to do, and giving context to why we are where we are, particularly the politicization of the state, the challenge around the national dialogue, and the fact that Venancio himself is not formally on the discussion table. How far can the dialogue process really address the issues that it has to address, which were the causes and drivers of the instability in 2024, and the issues of the economy that you touch on, the reality that without addressing the material conditions of the people, you are likely to continue to move in the same cycle of violence if people vote in 2029 without the conditions they were in 2024 having changed, and no sense of hope in the future that we are likely to see exactly what we saw in 2024. The issues of the idea of the state buying time, Frelimo buying time and channeling the people's anger into trying to demobilize them to push for what they've been pushing for. I think those are worrying things. You talk about the rumors around the efforts to extend the term of office from 5 years to 7 years. I think quite worrying, not just for Mozambique, but the region itself. And one hopes that the regional leadership will really stand up and stamp some authority on this, as they did across the continent when the third term phenomenon was taking center stage in the continent. I think we saw Zimbabwe a few days ago. The president has just extended his term from 5 years to 7 years, and I think that would be encouragement to President Chapo and Frelimo, if you ask me. And I think that, as you correctly say, some of these things would need a regional approach to the issues of critical minerals, extractivism, migration. All these things cannot be addressed in isolation by member states of this region. We all need to come together. And so thank you for that input. Quite helpful, but I think there will be a lot of questions directed to you guys during the discussions, and to colleagues, of course. Let's prepare our questions. Let's prepare for engagement as we move towards the open session. But I want to bring in my sister Fidelia Chamane, who is the executive director of SESC, which is a civil society learning and capacity building center in Mozambique. And we know that she has been an ever-present voice on issues of governance and democracy, citizen participation in Mozambique for quite some time. As she already has told us earlier, we also know that they are taking part in the dialogue process, and through observing, monitoring, but also participating. And so maybe Fidelia would be the right person to give us a sense of the progress that has been made in the national dialogue process. And Fidelia, you had already the lack of confidence on the process itself. And I think these are things that, if you have been a part of our dialogues, many other voices that are coming from Mozambique, civil society, and they keep talking about the exclusion of some key actors. They keep talking about doubts around what this dialogue process can achieve in 2 years across the 10 thematic areas. They keep talking about, I think, the levels at which each of these discussions are happening, and you have to be, I think it's Joao who said that you have to discuss some of these things at the right levels. But you are in the process, you are seeing what's happening. Give us a sense of what's happening, what's your take, what can be done to bring back the process back on track. Is there, again, I keep asking this, which I think Borges has already said, the role of what the region SADC itself could be. We had a SADC in the previous dialogue, we had a SADC Secretariat colleague who came and told us that they are involved, they are monitoring the process, they are following the process, and where possible, they engage with. We don't know how far that goes. But yeah, Fidelia, please do come in and take us through your speaking notes.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me here. It's a great opportunity, and I really appreciate. Well, after listening to my colleagues, I would say there is not that much to add. But I'll try in my remarks to focus on the role of civil society in the national dialogue, considering the fact that SESC is representing civil society in the process. I'm not sure if you are informed, but there was a call for civil society organizations to join the dialogue, and we have 3 representatives from the civil society, which is myself representing SESC, and there are 2 more people also as part of civil society in this process. So it's again a good opportunity for me to share based on my own experience, and also to learn from my colleagues, and what else can be done, and how exactly, and which exactly would be my role in promoting the change we want to see from the inside. Let me first start by saying that if we consider the broader context, and again, everything that has been highlighted by my fellow colleagues, it becomes clear that this dialogue is taking place for a reason, or at least for a main reason: the post-election conflict. But behind that, and of course, this is a kind of immediate trigger, but for me, it reflects a more profound and whispered perception that the country is rapidly moving towards a breaking point. Or at least that was my perception in 2024, that it wasn't only about that particular conflict, the post-election conflict, but it was reflecting a stage in which we were as citizens, and the quality of our relations with the state. There was and there is a growing disconnect, risk accelerating the erosion of the trust in public institutions, undermining the legitimacy of the state itself, but also weakening confidence in the democratic project that Mozambique has sought to build over the past decades. My colleagues also said a lot on and around this. So the dialogue, in my understanding, represents not only this huge opportunity to address immediate political tensions, but also a chance to rebuild trust, to renew the social contract, and to restore citizens' confidence in democratic institutions and the processes. However, the crises that gave rise to it do not disappear, in my opinion, only or simply because this dialogue begins. So we are still operating in a context of mistrust, frustration, and this growing distance between citizens and state. And this remains very much present even in the scope of this dialogue. So we do have what I would call impulses of civil society participation in the dialogue, but this must be understood within this context and through these contradictions again. So in one hand, we have hope. There is this high expectation that the process can open new paths for reform, for peace, and social transformation. But on the other hand, there is caution shaped by a long history of dialogues and peace agreements that have all very often succeeded in ending violence at that moment, in specific moments, but we have fallen short. We have fallen to address the deeper causes or delivering the transformation that citizens were expecting. So the national dialogue carries, in my opinion, both the weight of all those past disappointments and the new promises of a different future. And in that sense, it may not solve the crisis itself, of course, not immediately, or it won't immediately restore confidence in institutions. But I believe, and if you look at the apparent, how do I say this? The apparent change in terms of intensity of the conflict since the dialogue started, we can say that it is creating a kind of a momentum to let me rephrase this. I'm not sure I'm getting there, but what I'm trying to say is that it may not solve the crisis immediately or restore confidence in institutions, but it might end up creating a kind of opportunity, of a sense of a new opportunity to begin or rebuilding trust and to address through reforms, of course, some structural drivers of exclusion, conflict, and instability. So perhaps the participation is sustained by that remaining measure of hope, in my understanding. The belief that efforts that the effort of worthwhile, and that this is a struggle worth pursuing. so civil society participates fully aware of the limitations, in my opinion, and of the disappointments of the past, but also with the conviction, not from all of us, I might say, that the disengagement would only deepen the distance between citizens and institutions and would be chaotic at the end of the day. This understanding that the dialogue will generate reforms, revised policies, new directions, and shape government action in Mozambique for the next years to come. In that sense, the participation is not simply about being present at the table, as we are assessed, but it's also about helping to ensure that the reforms emerging from the process at the end of the day would be reflecting citizens' aspirations for peace, for justice, for inclusion, and for a more accountable state. So the question, I recall all of your questions, and I'll come back to them at the end. But I think the main question now is not whether these outcomes matter, but who is contributing at this moment to shaping them, and whose voices are reflected in them. So again, since the process is still ongoing, I think it's too premature to bring how do I say to elaborate in terms of what can be meaningfully assessed at this stage, but maybe more to talk about what the initiatives are and what we are being able to do collectively as civil society within the dialogue. Oh, so again, our participation as civil society in the dialogue cannot be addressed how do I separated or divorced from the context. There is a context, and even us as civil society organizations, we are experiencing our own contradictions regarding the process. But there is some movement, and we are being able to do a few things, not only those organizations represented on the table, which are on the table, and I would include CESC, but even outside the dialogue. So we have civil society organizations expanding the national dialogue beyond what I would call political elites. So I'm not sure how informed you are about the methodology of the dialogue, but it's mainly based on public hearings, and the idea is to back or to inform the reforms based on these public hearings, which are now being validated in this second phase. So there is a calendar, and there is an effort from the technical commission to reach all districts yes, all districts of the countries, and when possible, the very basic level. But resources, of course, are not enough, and imperfections also on the methodology, but also in the implementation, were somehow there was a risk that those imperfections will inhibit further participation from all groups and end up creating a situation in which only political elites and only the people with specific interests would be involved. So we have at this moment several civil society organizations. I can mention this platform, The Seed, which is a youth platform, and there is another one called Inclusion, and many other organizations, which are basically expanding the dialogue to other places, spaces, and groups, and they are bringing the result of the public hearings to the technical commission, so that this information is included in the final process of analysis. We also have civil society bringing specific contributions on constitutional reforms, governance, justice, decentralization, and economic inclusion, not only closer to citizens and communities, but also has specific contributions to the process. And this being done by specialists, by collectives with specific expertise, and this is being helpful to inform and to support the process. We also have civil society strengthening the quality, the transparency and inclusiveness of the process with a significant number of organizations monitoring the quality and even the credibility of the process, I would say. And if I can mention SIP, for instance, which is playing an important role as watchdog by keeping the public informed and encouraging accountability through the process. And this is being helpful in terms of managing people's expectations and reminding citizens, but also the technical commission and all actors involved, that this is a process rather than an event, and calling for accountability and transparency is somehow being very helpful for the process. We also have civil society, and I did say this before, amplifying voices. I wanted to mention this movement called Our Faces and Our Voices Count, which was the initiative led by 11 women collectives all over the country, but engaging 56 organizations, women organizations. And the idea was to do public hearings to women specifically, to bring their voices and needs and priorities to the process. And they ended up organizing what we called policy brief, 4 policy briefs on the specific thematics they consider important for women, on national resources, reconciliation and national unity, economic issues, and justice. And this group is now working, so this collective of women are now working with the court working groups to make sure that their proposals are being included in this exercise of drafting the reforms. And this is also being done with the other group I mentioned before, the platform, The Seed, which brought to the commission priorities and yes, the main priorities of the youth. I would then say that the participation of civil society goes behind participation itself. It's expanding the national conversation. It's strengthening transparency. It's deepening deliberation, and it's helping to ensure that voices traditionally excluded, as I said before, from national decision-making process are at least heard and reflected in the discussions about the country's future. So in my view, civil society engagement and the outcomes that emerge from it cannot be divorced from the context in which Mozambique finds itself today. This is being said considering that there's still mistrust among different actors and sectors of society. There is also a shared understanding that this process offers a unique opportunity to advance social transformation that we seek and to lay the foundations for, who knows, a state grounded on social justice. I know, and I can tell from the faces of my colleagues that I'm being too much romantic. I know, but I really do believe that even though there is still there's still a long way to go from achieving the vision that I'm sharing here. But this is a journey, and has every journey. This requires a starting point, and this is for me a starting point, and as such, it has the potential to become the beginning of a new social contract. I said the potential, and reflected in the reforms and the policies and the in institutions that may emerge from it. But again, I must say this is a process full of imperfections, and it may result in another imperfections. It's true, but I still see has a huge opportunity for Mozambicans to engage and somehow try to influence not only the process but the decisions and the policies. And you had the question on levels in which the discussions are happening. Well, I'm not sure I have the right answer for this question, but I think what we need to do is to make sure that the commission is held accountable in the whole process at all stages, and because well, and I did say this yesterday in a conversation with someone else. I'm sorry. In a conversation with someone else, and the question was, if the commission is being, how do I say, if the commission is being able to bring all the with sense of loyalty and integrity, all the contributions which are coming out from the public hearings to this exercise of drafting. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for this. I'm sorry.
And as you, if you can round up so that there will be
Yes,
an
and the question
discussion.
for me is, you know what does it really mean when to say to level to bring the discussions to the right levels? If based on my experience, when we are in the public hearings, people are not so sophisticated as we expected them to be. People are not so sophisticated elaborating on constitutional reforms, on extractive, on on justice, on peace and security, and people are worried about their own condition and situations. The main contributions that we have received, that we have heard from people, is to what extent will this dialogue bring food to the table? To what extent will this dialogue create better opportunities for the youth? To what extent to the 400,000 youth who come to the who start or who are in this productive age, if I can say that, can, are going to be absorbed if they will have opportunities for employment. To what extent this dialogue will end up bringing more and more services and with better quality, if the women will find the medicines, if they go to the hospitals, if there is a way of creating social peace in communities, if the war in Cabo Delgado will come to an end, that are the concerns and the issues related to the localization of opportunities. If the communities and the youth and the women and the most vulnerable of the most vulnerable groups will end up having real opportunities from the extraction of national resources in their own communities, and how exactly this will bring change in terms of benefits for the communities and food to the tables. So this is the level of how do I say of the discussions that we are having. So it's during the public hearings. So this is it. So it's part of our responsibility to do the intellectual exercise to reinterpret what we are hearing and transform into reform in policies or in reforms. So for me, the dialogue must be then evaluated in terms of how capable the commission will be in terms of channeling those contributions and transforming.
Fidelia, I will have to stop you.
It's fine. Thank you.
I think that there will be questions, and I think we can take it during the discussion. Want to allow a few people to be able to interact with you guys. So thank you so much for the input, but most importantly, for the faith and the hope. I think we always say that hope does not disappoint, and I think we need more people that are hopeful, unlike my brother Borges. Uh, and so I think that you still believe that by participating, you can be able to sort of bring about change from within. And I think very important things that you put on the table, that this dialogue represents everything from the past frustrations to the hope of a better future than the past you are coming from. I think in terms of the methodology, what's happening with the dialogue, this should be our fifth process of a SALO in these discussions. We have had Dr. Uker Dias a number of times. He has shared with us some of the reports in this platform. We have had Jonathan from Inclusio. We have had Melania from Amjij. We have had Julia Wachabe, who talked about our faces, our voices campaign. Professor Novunga, who I see here, my good friend Fatima, and many others who are in the platform today have been part of. So I think that many colleagues, especially from the region, appreciate the update because they've been a part of the process from the beginning. What exactly is happening? What the phases are, and I think I'm happy that you see a lot of positives in terms of where you're going, and I think this is always an evolving process that you guys, as civil society, need to be on your toes in terms of how do we protect the gains that are coming out of that process, and how do we include much more people. We have talked about Vancho being out of the process. I just saw that he posted something um, on his social media saying that he will be participating today in a court process. I think it's a public hearing. Interestingly, he called it an exclusionary process. It's whereas it is regarded as a national inclusive dialogue. He calls it a national exclusive dialogue, which is quite interesting, and I think a pointer to some of the things that Borges and Joao have been putting on the table, that a sense of uh, how successful this dialogue process will be is still a question that hangs in the air. I want to move very quickly, but thanks so much, Fidelia, for that. I am expecting that we will have you, because I have some specific questions in the next dialogue. So I'll try to really ask you to come on the next dialogue so that we focus on the internal processes of the dialogue process itself and the content that is coming out, because I think that's also important. I want to move to my brother Custodio Duma, who, again, like many of the colleagues before, has been on the core face of the struggle for a better human rights culture, democracy, and governance in Mozambique. Has done a lot of work in consultants, in supporting civil society, but also was the first chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission of Mozambique, which is very a very important platform that he led from 2012 to 2017. And I know that he has been engaged on the situation in the north, particularly the conflict in Cabo Delgado. And Duma, as we hear from your colleagues, uh, can you give us a sense of how has the conflict in the north been incorporated into the national dialogue efforts? Do we get a sense that that situation could also be addressed by the broad dialogue process framework itself? That would be maybe my small ask, which you could be free but also give us your thoughts on some of the things that we have had. And colleagues, let's prepare to open up for discussion. After Duma, we'll go to Ambassador Lindiwe Zulu to get a sense of a reaction and thoughts on how do we move forward. Duma, please do come in.
Yes, thank you very much. And good morning, everybody, again. My first word will be just to thank you for this invitation. And it is a honor for me, to have opportunity to discuss a little bit about what is going on. I'll have very few to say after my brothers and sister, Fidela, have said. But my first word will be, just to say, I'm also very honored to know that Ambassador Lindiwe Zulu is here. I met her in face for the first time in Santon last, I think, December or November. she's very special and a very charismatic also person. And I was very happy to learn about experience on Mozambique. So it's good for me to see that she's still engaged on the changes, building democracy and participation in Africa, special in our region, and again special in Mozambique, in the context of Mozambique. Yeah, maybe because we have translation and my brothers and sister didn't use it, I will prefer to speak in Portuguese, just, to hear a little bit about how we think and how we say in Portuguese the issues. Vou mudar para português e vou pedir talvez uns segundos para aqueles que querem fazer switch da tradução.
Sorry, Duma.
Ok?
Colleagues, if you look on your Zoom page where you have opened, you will see there is a part that speaks to, I think it should be in translation or
Interpretation, there's a globe.
interpretation, yeah. So click on that and please choose the English channel if you don't understand Portuguese. But if you are like me and you understand Portuguese, you can just continue listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Obrigado. Monjose, I think that, ou melhor, eu vou falar, eu estava a falar em português. Eu penso que a maior questão em Moçambique neste momento é que os cidadãos querem mudanças. Este é o maior ponto. Querem mudanças e estas mudanças não são necessariamente mudança, digamos assim, políticas, do regime político em si, mas mudanças da maneira como a governação.
Hey,
Yes?
sorry again, sorry again, Duma. The translator, please, can you try and up your volume, the English volume, and lower Duma's volume on the English channel? Because I think personally, I'm struggling to hear you because your voice is almost at the same volume with Duma's voice on the English channel.
Okay.
Are we good to go?
Yeah, thank you. Bom, eu estava a dizer que a maior questão é que os cidadãos querem mudanças. E querem mudanças na maneira como a governação em Moçambique tem sido feita. Com alguns aspectos que eu vou aqui mencionar. É importante também notar que, de facto, a minha percepção pessoal, na última questão que o Munhoz colocou, a questão de Cabo Delgado não tem sido uma matéria de grande relevo e de grande importância no diálogo inclusivo, no diálogo nacional inclusivo. E isto, de alguma forma, deixa este desafio de Cabo Delgado um pouco à margem daquilo que estamos a tratar a nível nacional. Eventualmente porque o diálogo nacional inclusivo ele partiu de um contexto específico, que é o contexto eleitoral 2024, enquanto que a questão de Cabo Delgado é uma questão que já vem praticamente ao longo dos últimos 9 anos, agora praticamente a fazer 10 anos. Parecem duas situações diferenciadas. No meu ponto de vista, não são diferenciadas. Fazem parte do mesmo contexto, são produtos das mesmas causas e precisam respostas que têm o mesmo alinhamento. Eu tenho estado a pensar muitas vezes, porque faço parte também dos grupos de trabalho do diálogo nacional inclusivo, sobretudo na temática sobre justiça, tenho estado a pensar que o nosso diálogo nacional inclusivo, olhando mais para as questões políticas, devia criar também espaços muito visíveis para questões socioeconômicas, porque uma boa parte das reivindicações que vêm tanto de Cabo Delgado, assim como das últimas situações eleitorais, elas têm a ver com situações socioeconômicas. E é aqui que eu penso que precisamos olhar as mudanças que têm sido reclamadas ou pedidas por este conjunto de pessoas, de cidadãos e, sobretudo, a população jovem. Um outro fator importante também é olharmos para os números eleitorais de 2024. Tivemos uma abstenção um pouco próxima, um pouco acima de 50%. Entretanto, acima de 50%, mais para o norte do país, onde nós temos a situação do conflito. Quando desagregamos esta percentagem, vemos que a participação em regiões como Nampula, Beira e toda a região sul, a abstenção foi de um pouco entre 30% a 40%. O que quer dizer que houve muita participação, sobretudo da juventude, nestes lugares, a nível do sul do país e também a nível das províncias, como se fala, cidades, sobretudo os grandes centros urbanos. O que mostra a consciência desta juventude nestes lugares, as necessidades econômicas e o apelo às mudanças. E o que tem estado a falhar? O que tem sido ponto de agenda principal nestas reivindicações? Eu podia mencionar várias, mas escolho basicamente três ou quatro, onde a primeira é mesmo processos políticos inclusivos, não é? A nível das últimas eleições, os últimos 4 períodos, ou 3, vamos lá assim dizer, eleitorais, períodos eleitorais, tivemos um engajamento da sociedade civil, desculpa, de partidos políticos, de certa forma limitada, tanto por legislação ou por procedimentos complexos de estruturas que estavam a fazer a administração eleitoral, incluindo a própria Comissão Nacional de Eleições, o STAI, que é o gabinete técnico, e até os outros organismos, como, por exemplo, tribunais, mais para o Conselho Constitucional, que não foram instituições, que não foram, digamos assim, estruturas que, de alguma forma, estiveram abertas para maior inclusão política. Número um. Número dois, o respeito pelos direitos humanos, que tem sido um aspecto clamado pela maior parte da sociedade urbana, sobretudo a juventude, mas no contexto dos direitos civis e políticos, não é? A participação cidadã, os espaços políticos, sociais, mais reduzidos, não é? A perseguição digamos assim, de ativistas ou ativistas sociais ou ativistas políticos, sobretudo num lado político, para oposição, que inclui até encarceramentos e assassinatos. Dificuldade de cobrir também o que está a acontecer no país. No caso de Cabo Delgado, por exemplo, que tivemos situações muito específicas com jornalistas e outros ativistas que foram dados como desaparecidos e foram dados como encarcerados e, bem recentemente, alguns que foram retirados equipamentos de trabalho. Então, esta questão do exercício de direitos civis e políticos na componente do respeito pelos direitos humanos e abertura de espaços cívicos tem sido um aspecto muito importante. Já tinha mencionado um pouco a independência das instituições democráticas, mas especificamente, neste caso, não é? Os tribunais e a administração eleitoral. E, e isto tem sido praticamente um dos pontos levantados quase em todo o processo do diálogo nacional inclusivo. Mas não menos importantes que isso, é a própria inclusão econômica. Com maior informação, maior acesso à informação, maior informação sobre a atividade mineira no país, sobre eventuais ganhos do país nesta, digamos assim, no contexto da indústria extrativa, ao mesmo tempo com a redução da capacidade econômica nacional, Moçambique sendo colocado como um dos países que está praticamente na linha muito abaixo da pobreza e com uma realidade, de facto, muito complicada, tendo em conta os últimos relatórios que têm sido dados. Então, há uma franja social que tem clamado também por uma inclusão socioeconômica mais efetiva. E, eventualmente, no contexto do diálogo nacional inclusivo, as questões socioeconômicas têm sido também relegadas um pouco para o fim, assim um pouco mais abaixo da lista de prioridades. E tentamos olhar para a resposta das questões mais civis e políticas, no contexto dos direitos civis e políticos, e não necessariamente dos direitos econômicos, sociais e culturais, que são o maior problema. Percebi na fala dos que me antecederam, de alguma forma, que é bem possível que haja respostas muito contundentes e eficientes para a demanda dos políticos, partidos políticos e organizações que participam dos espaços cívicos e políticos, mas não temos estado a olhar para respostas concretas às demandas sociais, econômicas e culturais. O que para mim é um grande desafio para este diálogo nacional inclusivo. Embora eu também acredite que o diálogo inclusivo é uma oportunidade muito grande para nós podermos responder às questões mais prementes da sociedade, sobretudo trazendo uma plataforma que pode levar-nos a consensos, de alguma forma. Criando oportunidades também de discutirmos juntos os grandes problemas que provocaram a tensão política. E neste aspecto, volto a repisar que temos estado a ignorar um pouco a questão de Cabo Delgado neste diálogo. Eventualmente porque uma parte dos atores não estão todos aqui, não é? Não são necessariamente os atores políticos nacionais conhecidos que têm estado nesse diálogo, que fazem parte do outro lado do que está acontecendo em Cabo Delgado. Eventualmente por essa dificuldade de atores, mas é preciso que nós possamos ter forma de cavar e encontrar quais são os interlocutores do outro lado que podem nos ajudar a encontrar respostas. E também é uma oportunidade para religar esta confiança, sobretudo entre os cidadãos e as instituições. Como eu mencionei, que um dos grandes problemas é, de facto, a desconfiança. Mas já se falou, de alguma forma, a ausência do Venâncio, por um lado, não é? A perseguição, a contínua perseguição de políticos, por outro lado, e também, não só de políticos, mas também de ativistas, não é? Isso mostra alguma fraqueza para que nós possamos chegar a um nível de consenso que se procura com esse diálogo. Então, eu podia dizer em poucas palavras que, embora o processo do diálogo político nacional, de nacional inclusivo, seja, para mim, uma grande oportunidade para encontrar plataforma de diálogo, de consensos e de respostas, eu penso que, olhando para o timing político, já estamos a entrar na fase das eleições autárquicas, por um lado, e daqui a pouco as eleições gerais, de novo. O tempo que nos sobra, eventualmente, não vai ser suficiente para que este processo de diálogo inclusivo nacional venha a responder todas essas demandas. Por duas razões que vou apresentar. Primeiro, é que as conclusões que estão a sair do diálogo deverão ser transformadas em políticas e em legislação, que deverá ser implementado. Não estou a ver, neste período curto, a conseguirmos encontrar respostas traduzidas em políticas e em legislação eficiente num período curto. Segundo, eu penso que a situação econômica nacional em que nós nos encontramos agora é que, com cenários que poderá se agravar nos próximos 2 ou 3 anos, tanto tendo em conta a questão econômica nacional, assim como os desafios climáticos ou desafios naturais que nós poderemos ter em breve, não vão permitir que tenhamos as condições materiais, financeiras necessárias para concluir a bom termo este processo do diálogo nacional inclusivo, a ponto de podermos responder às questões nacionais. A minha proposta neste momento é que possamos repartir digamos assim, as intervenções diretas aos cidadãos em em duas categorias. Primeira, as imediatas, que podem ser respondidas com transformações políticas legislativas imediatas, mesmo ao longo do processo do diálogo nacional inclusivo, enquanto decorre, algumas medidas podem ir sendo tomadas através da Assembleia da República ou através das instituições democráticas, reformas que são possíveis na lei, enquanto aguardamos que, quando chegar a fase em que o processo de diálogo nacional inclusivo traga-nos os seus resultados finais, eles possam ser traduzidos em políticas nacionais que possam ser transcritas em normas, em regulamentos e materiais que podem ser usados para maior inclusão. Então, eu vejo um cenário ainda muito desafiador, que precisa de uma liderança muito inclusiva, muito determinada em responder a algumas questões de uma forma imediata, obviamente, com a comparticipação de todos os setores sociais. E vou parar por aqui. Muito obrigado. Thank you, Munhoz.
Thank you, Custodio. I think very, very important discussion. And what you put at the end, I know that some of the things you reinforced had already been put on the table. But your suggestion on the way forward, which I think is also quite telling of where this process is. The need to really address the immediate questions. I think when you do that, you are questioning whether this process can, in 2 years, be able to address what has been put on the table as the scope of the dialogue process itself. And that maybe there is need to rethink the approach, focus on the immediate issues that need attention as a way of preparing the ground and conducive environment to address long-term challenges. And I think these are discussions that you are already having, and I'm hoping that the presentations have been made to Makwakwa and his team on your suggestions. And I think that Fidelia as well is here as part of the people that are participating in the process to constantly be checking is this a pathway that will bring results, or we need to change the approach, the methodology? I think one of the questions that I saw Wilker quickly joined. I'm not sure if he is still there. But I see Fatima and Novunga, as I said earlier, Isidro and many other Mozambicans are here. What we kept hearing in the previous engagements is the questioning of the methodology itself, and to some extent, lack of clarity by many other actors around what this process or how the process will actually unfold. And I think when you talk about the need to identify immediate issues, long-term issues, constitutional matters, issues of just the law, separating those things would really help to be clear about what you can achieve in 2 years and what you'll not achieve in 2 years. But thank you so much for that input. And I think for us, we are getting richer every day because as many angles, as many suggestions are coming on the table, and hopefully we'll be able to share our consolidated take on the entire process that we have gone through since the inception of the dialogue from an outside point of view, which of course might be helpful for you guys. But I think we have a strong take on what we have had from colleagues in Mozambique. I want to quickly jump to the last, but of course not the least speaker, Ambassador Lindiwe Zulu, as I said earlier on, needs no introduction to this platform or to the citizens of the region. A very strong advocate for Pan-African ideas. For those of us who know the role she played in the Zimbabwe dialogue process after similar challenges in 2008. I know that she is not just only fearless, but she is committed to really finding solutions for our people. And Ambassador, you have heard from colleagues from Mozambique, and as you can predict, a lot of challenges, a lot of uncertainty of where things are going. And there is always a question of what can this region do collectively as leadership to try and lessen the impact of some of these challenges on our people? Is there more that could be done at a regional level to address these issues? Your thoughts, Ambassador. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. I wish to request that I switch off my video because my network might not be very stable. But you can see it is me. I am not a robot, as the gadget kept on asking me. I wish to thank SALO for always enabling and creating this environment for us as citizens of our individual countries, but also the region in organizing these kind of meetings. And I think these meetings really, as you rightfully say, we get richer by the day, and the Pan-African ideas get tested at such platforms. And I'm hoping that as SALO, you will continue to get the support that you need so that not only do we have these meetings like this virtual, we can be able sometimes, I know it's very expensive, but sometimes to come into a room, because I personally feel that, when you want to dialogue, when you want to mediate, when you want to do connecting to people and getting a sense of the people from their heart, from the mind and all, you need to be in a room where you can look at each other straight in the eyes and also be able to read each other as we are in. So it's just a request, and hopefully that you'll get the support for such. My second issue is thanking you for always bringing young people to the platform, and you know how I feel about it. I make the statement that we were also young, and the reason why we were able to rise to all occasions and do what we did was because we had people that saw talent, that saw opportunity, and gave us the opportunity to grow by including us in the activities. And here I speak particularly as a member of the African National Congress, that it was the leadership of the African National Congress that kept on bringing us, young as we were at the time, into conferences, into these meetings and experiences, and just bringing us as young people so that we can learn for the future. So thank you, Salo, and just keep trying to get as many young people as possible. I'm also hoping that as soon we will see publications of the work that we have been doing, because it's one thing for us to come to these platforms, engage, but we are also making history, writing history for the future so that my grandchildren and their children can be able to pick up or the audios or the books, or maybe one day some films will be made, some documentaries will be made of these engagements. The fourth one for me is really wishing that SALO can find a way of connecting to institutions, which it did in the past. And this, I think it was enabled because it had the necessary financial support and all, connecting to the institutions that are supposed to help guide us in these kind of discussions. Here I'm talking about, for instance, SADC as a region. The work that we are doing here and the work that SALO has been doing all the time needs to find itself in the hands of the leaders of today and the leaders of tomorrow, so that they can get a sense outside of themselves. They can get a sense of what are other people thinking, what are NGOs thinking, what are people thinking out there. So if you find a way that we can be able to strengthen this leg of submitting some of this. I don't know how the SADC structures outside of the usual bureaucracy. I don't know how is it structured in such a way that it is able to receive some of the work that is done, and therefore SALO must be among one of those that actually should submit. And now we are reflecting on Mozambique, Mozambique's political and peace building process following the contest of 2024 general elections. I don't want to go into the discussions that have already been done by the previous speakers, and I wish to thank Joao Borges and Fidelia for your contribution, as well as the last speaker for his contribution, and Tate Duma, and thank you for your kind words. I think from a South African perspective, and especially from an ANC perspective, I think it is important for us to ask ourselves the question, all the dialogues that have happened in the African continent, and especially the dialogues that have happened in the region. Yesterday, when I was looking at the countries that I have personally been thrown into in terms of the dialogues, I realized that in the African continent, actually, we can speak of South Africa, Kenya, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Burundi, Sudan, Mali, Chad, Guinea-Bissau, Somalia, DRC, Libya, Zimbabwe. You know, I was thinking to myself, let me juxtapose those processes that took place in terms of mediation in those countries with what is happening in Mozambique and say, I wish to thank Mozambique, its leadership, its people, pained obviously by what we saw during the elections. And I happen to have been there as one of the monitors of the elections because of the African National, because Frelimo invited us as the African National Congress from a sister party point of view. All the liberation movements were invited. But that's a discussion for another day, because I want to leave this in your minds also, to say we as the sister parties in the region, we go and we monitor the elections, and we work together with the political party, in this case Frelimo, and we are taken to different centers to go and monitor and see for ourselves what is happening. I'm thanking Frelimo in this case because when we were there, we said we, as the African National Congress, would like to go to places which we, as the African National Congress, feel if we went to those places, we are not going to be labeled as people who just came to rubber stamp and go. Frelimo enabled us to choose the places where we wanted to go to. And our reason for doing that was because we wanted to go particularly to the areas where there were challenges. We knew that there were going to be challenges. Why were we doing that? It is for purposes of ensuring that when we now write our report as the African National Congress, and those are discussed between ourselves, Frelimo and the ANC, were able to openly, frankly, put what we saw, put as what we saw as challenges, weaknesses, and also say where did we see where there were strengths. And we focused a lot on the institution, and that is the institution, the Electoral Commission. We focused on that because we believed that the electoral commissions in each and every one of our countries need to learn from each other in order for them. Yes, we know, we understand the sovereignty and everything, but the reason why we are sister parties, it is because we need to learn lessons and we need to support each other in building and strengthening our institutions so that ultimately, when the results come out, they are not as contested highly to a point where then people decide they are going to go out on the street, they are going to demonstrate, they're going to burn things, they're going to be destructive, because we believe that we need to create conducive environment, firstly for people, but also we need to strengthen our institutions. So fast forward, I was looking at the places where one has been in terms of facilitation, post-elections, and all that. And I believe that one of the weaknesses that we have in terms of pre-dialogues, I think we shouldn't wait for problems for us to start having dialogues. Yes, I understand that all the places that I've been to, whether it's Zimbabwe, whether it's the DRC, whether it's the inter-Congolese dialogue and all that, those were created on the basis that there was a conflict and we needed to find the conflict. So my point is we need to keep the dialogues going at all times so that the very issues that push us into dialogues are issues that we try and deal with at all times. And in that, I also believe that the most important is centering all these things, these dialogues, sorry, not these things, these dialogues that I'm talking about, centering them on the needs of the people, centering them on creating conducive environment for our people to participate, and creating conducive environment for our people to participate. It is also about political leadership and political willingness to even listen to those that you don't want to listen to. And one day, maybe SALO, one day, we might have to have a topic where we are evaluating our participation, regional participation, and South Africa's role in the mediation in all these places that I'm talking about. What are the lessons that we learn there? And from my practical experience is when leadership is willing to even listen to those it does not want to listen. You cannot, as leaders of a country, not want to listen to everyone who is who has a voice. And in fact, my view is that you even have to give the voice even to those you don't want to give the voice, because what is the ultimate of a national dialogue? An ultimate to national dialogue, as you see from the South African experience, it is about what people are crying out for. From a South African perspective, people are crying for land reform, people are crying for service delivery, people are crying for energy security, people in Mozambique, they're crying for exactly the same things that South Africans are crying for. So there is no difference. Now, if you don't create a conducive environment for the people to participate, they will feel the elite, those that have the means, there's those who think they have a better know-how are the ones who are occupying, are the ones who are able to travel even to the places where the national dialogue is taking place. The other issue for me is, how do you bring the national dialogue right down to the minutest area where people can feel that they are participating, and therefore they feel that their voice is being heard? But more than that, once you have done the dialogue, ultimately, can people see the difference? As Fidelia was saying, what's the purpose? Is it going to change what's happening in Cabo Delgado? Is it going to change the economic environment? Is it going to change the living needs of the people? If you have a dialogue that is not going to ultimately end up in that, so you will have a vicious cycle. And also, one of the things that I learned, particularly in all the areas that I've been, whether it was in Zimbabwe, DRC, Burundi, and so forth, it was, do you create monitoring and evaluation? Here's an example I can make. In the DRC, there was the peace process that ended up with the Sun City talks. But what also happened, because of the United Nations and because of the leadership of Kofi Annan and the leadership of Thabo Mbeki here in South Africa, there was a need for a creation of a third-party verification mechanism. That mechanism was one that was almost like an institution on the side that had to go on the ground and make sure that the people who have come together and are committing to the peace process are actually implementing the peace process. So DRC, in particular, at the time, Thabo Mbeki, Kofi Annan, and all of them, they made sure that there is a monitoring mechanism. Fast forward to Zimbabwe, the same thing. Even in Zimbabwe, there was an agreement that was signed by the different political parties, but there was something that SADC created on the side to make sure that what they agree upon, they implement. So, without saying too much, I just personally feel it is good. Or, well, I'm always an optimist. I'm always optimistic. I'm always looking for the positive side of everything without necessarily burying my head into the sand and thinking that it will automatically happen. Everything that we do, we have to work for. So, in conclusion, this is what I would like to say. The ANC, the liberation movements, for instance, came to a summit which they had last year. And one of the things that the summit really, we boxed in that summit to say, as liberation movements, when we were fighting for a particular purpose. Where are we in that commitment, the commitments that we have made to our people, from a point of view of our economies, from a point of view of creating conducive environment on the ground, for a point of view of building institutions of democracy, from a point of view of being transparent, fighting corruption, fighting all those things? Where are we? And we also agreed with ourselves that we must find a way of learning good practices amongst each other. It's not to say South Africa always does best all the time. Each one of us have got strengths in one thing or the other. Can we then share those best practices among each other and hold each other accountable to those best practices? So it would be good to just check. We had a summit which brought all the leaders together. We had a declaration at the end of that summit. Where are we as the liberation movements, both individually and also collectively? But lastly, what is it that we can do to have a monitoring and evaluation mechanism that is very honest, open, and that people can trust? That people won't say, oh no, those ones have become the elite of today and they are supporting each other as liberation movements. We don't want to hold people hostage of our history. We want people to appreciate our history, to appreciate the sacrifices that have been made, but we must also be very frank and honest with each other about the challenges of today, because the challenges of today, in my view, are not just within the political parties. The challenges of today are also the internal and external influences and dynamics that are happening, including even the NGOs and NPOs and the people that are participating in this national dialogue. There are dynamics where there's also external pressure that makes them believe that no, this dialogue is meaningless, is useless, it's not going to take us anywhere. But we, the ones who are leading the dialogue, and Mozambique created a different environment where they legislated for this. Make it possible for people to trust the process. Make it possible for people to defend the process, because it cannot be us politicians and political people who are defending the process. The best way for us is when the people themselves are at the center and the people themselves are the ones that defend these processes. Only then can we be sure that we're doing the right thing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador. As usual, quite important lessons, and firstly, the need to learn from our history as a people, the history of dialogues in this continent and in the region. What lessons do we carry into the next dialogue? What guarantees can we put when we start dialogues to ensure that the dialogues do not repeat the mistakes of the past, but that they move us forward? Discussions among liberation movements in terms of really appreciating the challenges that we face today, and the need for liberation movements to appreciate that we are in a different in a different era in terms of the nature of the challenges, which might be the same but just changing slightly. But I think you put a number of solutions in terms of what we could use in moving forward. And I'm quite sure that colleagues from Mozambique have paid attention, and some might reach out to you in terms of how to get to implement some of the things you are suggesting. I think the importance of what we do as SALO in terms of being able to produce publications of these processes, harvesting knowledge products out of these processes, and being able to share with colleagues so that we become learning organizations, and we become a people that are informed by history and lessons, and not just move as if we don't have processes that we are coming from. And we appreciate that the need for young people to be a part of this. And I think this is even more true for the dialogue process in Mozambique. I think Borges, Joao, Fidelia, and Custodio kept saying that post the election, it was mainly the young people that were on the streets demonstrating, raising their frustrations and protests around what was happening in the country. And it's even more important that they are not left out in these discussions, and not just as part of ticking boxes, but that they are central in crafting the solutions for tomorrow. I'm not sure in the monitoring how far are young people being involved in the dialogue process in Mozambique. But of course, we take that we need to involve young people in these processes. I want my colleagues to check in the chat if there is a few questions. I think I saw Fatima's question. I saw Martino's question. Maybe I'll ask one to read those. But in the meantime, do we have any questions? We'll just take hopefully less than 10 minutes we are already over time. Any questions that you want to pose to, or any input that you want to put to the colleagues? Clarity on some specific issues, and as we are raising our hands, Samantha, can you quickly go through the chat?
No problem. The first question is from Martino Chachiwa, who says, unfortunately, I have to leave the meeting. Allow me to thank all the presenters for the very informative presentations. I have a question to Fidelia. The key question is whether or not the dialogue can resolve the issue of elections in the country. Consultations in Mozambique are not new. The issue is to what extent the results of these consultations reflect what people really contribute. So that the key questions of elections can be resolved. Can the dialogue prevent from Frelimo imposing the term extension that we are hearing about? Can the country avoid the kind of backsliding we see in sister countries where the aim of legal reforms are designed to ensure that the party in power strengthen control over the state levers to an extent that transition is rendered impossible? For me, if that does not happen, we must expect the cyclical violence to continue. I'm happy to hear the optimism, but the reality on the ground contains no evidence that this process will result in anything transformative. And then the second, which is the last question, is from Fatima, who says, I have the same questions and concerns. I don't see clear direction to change in this dialogue. A renewal of social contract demands commitment from ruling party mainly, and I do not see that happening. The other thing often is neglected is the fact that after all this consultations that are not new, who will control the process are other groups highly politicized. I hope this will not be a missed opportunity to refund our nation.
Thank you, Sam. Any hand, any of our colleagues who want to quickly come in? I see my good ambassador is here. My favorite ambassador is in the room. Any question? Do you have any hands? I see Prof. Adriano. Any word? Fatima, thanks for the question. I see Jonathan is here. You are the young people that were being referred to, and I see that you're doing some good work as inclusio, not just on the dialogue, but broadly in working with other young people. Any question? If not, I would move back to the speakers. There are those two questions which I think sum up again what you guys have been saying, the constant nagging of mistrust and in the institutions, in the processes, and lack of confidence. Will this dialogue prevent, I think it was Martino says, that will it prevent what we just saw in Zim, a term extension by President Chapo? And I think some question in different words asked by Fatima around the election. Yeah, let me again start with the order that I see the order as Richard. Let me start with the original order.
Sorry, Moses, there's another question in the chat.
Okay, let's hear that.
From Anthony Papo. How do we deal with NGOs which are part of hostile external agendas and programs to create permanent instability and chaos to benefit economically? How do we also deal with civil society which support instability and violence as a way of engaging with processes in their countries?
A very rich question that I know my colleagues who obviously them being part of civil society will be able to deal with, but quite an interesting question. Ambassador Mandisa.
Hi, I'm Monjosi and everyone.
Good to see you.
Thanks to the presenters for giving us their perspectives. I just have two questions. I'm not quite sure how to ask this question. I assume that the content of the substance of what is coming out of the dialogue process is something that's kept under wraps. But that is my assumption. So in a sense, my question is whether a time will come when we can be let in on what issues are being deliberated on, what possible outcome solutions. I mean, we know about the headings. It's constitutional reform, it's electoral reform, it's all manner of issues. But we never talk about the deliberations themselves and what's coming out. Is that something that, by protocol, has been agreed to be kept under wraps until the end of the process? Because it would be interesting, to get a sense really of how these important topics are being addressed in the dialogue process. So that's the one question. The second question that I'd like to raise, I was hearing this for the first time today, and it is being, brought up as a rumor, about term extension from 5 to 7 years. And this is something that we've seen all around in several countries. Now, I would imagine that something like that coming up in the context of a Mozambique that is in a national dialogue would be a matter that would have to be a subject of the national dialogue. So I'd like to hear from those that are in Mozambique whether indeed this is something that has been formally proposed or it's still a rumor, and if it has been formally proposed, whether it wouldn't have to be something that is, brought to the national dialogue process. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador. As always, I think very, very important questions, and I think, yeah, interesting questions, especially on the content for me, including the content that civil society itself and Fidelia could answer that, because when you try to look for what a civil society you have submitted to court as individual organizations, as coalitions, you rarely find a portal where you are able to download all these submissions. And maybe the ambassador's question is quite poignant in that is there some agreement that let's not put out the content of what we're discussing until such a time. And of course, the issue of the term extension, which I should say is quite worrying, because I think it will only brew more instability, because opposition will obviously feel that it's not the right time to be doing that, especially given where you're coming from. It's the same way this has happened, that you are likely to see a lot of instability as a result of that. Just like the third term phenomenon across the continent created a lot of instability and coups in some cases, especially in North Africa, that every time a president decided to go for a third term, change a constitution, you saw a coup, you saw massive number of people on the streets, and it will not be different for Zimbabwe. It will not be different for Mozambique, and I think that has to be worrying. But also more importantly, it has to be worrying for the regional leadership, and that's why I think Ambassador Lindiwe Zulu's input is important, because I think if the regional leadership has no courage to really address these issues, but Borges, please pick the questions you want to respond to briefly and give us your shorting part, your parting shot rather.
Well,
It has to be short. That's why I said you're shorting. It has to be short. Thanks.
no, yeah, it's fine. I think the most important we have already addressed it here. So it was also good to follow discussion from colleagues and learning from what other people understand and their experiences. So maybe I can just address two questions, not fully, just part of it. Well, Martinho Sheshua's question, I really don't think this dialogue is going to resolve the problem of rigging the election. The problem of fraud is now not lack of knowledge. It doesn't mean the institution that should organize free and fair election in Mozambique, they lack knowledge on how to organize a fair and free election. This is a problem of a regime. This is a problem of an authoritarian regime which manifests itself through, first of all, not allowing electoral competition. And this is not an isolated problem. This is something that we see within different countries in the region. We saw it in Tanzania last year. We see it in Zimbabwe from time to time. We see it in Mozambique. So this is a problem that you should not address that fully through dialogue. So dialogue is not going to resolve the problem of rigging the election because of its nature. This is just manifestation of authoritarian regime which doesn't allow electoral competition to be fair. A second thing, which should be of our major concern, is the freedom of dissent. We have dissenters in Mozambique, which include civil society organizations, journalists, some call them human rights defender, whatever we call them. We have dissenters who are the first target of the regime, including opposition leaders. So these people, as I said, are being targeted up to now, are being killed. So targeted murders in Mozambique are happening as we are talking now. A month ago, were killed in Shokwe, in Niassa, opposition leaders. So this is something that we should stop as a country, as a region. Third and last question, which I think is very interesting for someone, Anthony Papo. How do we deal with NGOs which are part of hostile external agendas? I don't know what NGOs are that. I really don't know which external agenda is that. But the NGOs or civil society organizations that we have in Mozambique have a clear agenda. First of all, to be set up and established as NGO in Mozambique, you need to be approved by law, by the government. Second, who fund the NGOs are the same European country institution that fund the government. So there's no such a thing as hostile NGOs in Mozambique. And NGO don't kill people. Who kill people, innocent people in Mozambique, are government forces. And that is clear. That is seen, it's proven. If you look to the trial of Inocencio Matavelo was killed in the Gaza province just a few days before the 2019 election, was murdered by police officers. So those are the ones who are dangerous. And police officers killed dozens of or hundreds of young people during the post-election process. I think those are the ones who are really dangerous, not NGOs with address, which are created by law in Mozambique, who are held accountable by Mozambican laws, so forth. So thank you. I think this is what I had to say from my side. And it was again a good opportunity to be in this conversation. As I said, learning from colleagues and sharing my own views. Thank you.
Thanks, Borges, and I hope to have you again in another discussion in future. And Joao, please do pick whatever you want to respond to.
Yeah. Um, as a sociologist and as someone who likes to understand the reality based on history, on the long-term history, I would say I would somehow agree with the Secretary of Frelimo, former Secretary of Frelimo, who said that Frelimo dialogue, but do not negotiate. And I would like to somehow extend it uh, to the central government in Mozambique. The central government, the history tells us that the central government in Mozambique do not negotiate uh, with civil society organizations, which is something new since the 90s, at least independent ones. So history teaches that reforms in Mozambique do not come from dialogues in conference centers. It comes from long, bloody wars. I'm not defending war. I'm a very peaceful person, but I'm being realistic. The facts teach us that we are independent, not because Eduardo Jan founded Frelimo or joined to Frelimo and start talks with the colonial regime. No, we are independent because there were a 10 years war, a liberation struggle. Frelimo took 2 years to realize that it is not possible to get independence through dialogue. We need 10 years of war. We have a new constitution in the 90s, in the 1990s, very progressive constitution who recognize all the fundamental rights. All the fundamental rights are there. It's a very beautiful text. But that constitution come after a long period of war as well. It started to be an aggressive war, but with time it became a civil. And Frelimo, when come to power, never recognized, never understood what independence meant to the general Mozambique, which was to live their lives, to act in the capitalist system that were already developed without discrimination, racial discrimination. But Frelimo come with a very top-down, uh, intolerant, and authoritarian uh, policies that uh, um, uh, uh, shock with the expectations of majority of the population. Now we have already almost 10 years war in Cabo Delgado. And in 2024, we had this uprising in, in every city of Mozambique. It was somehow a civil war. It was a general protests from the north to the south of Mozambique. The 23 of December of 2024 was a chaotic day with hundreds of public buildings being destroyed, police stations being burned, and policemen just running away, trying to escape from a very hungry population. So the history tells us that the government only negotiate when they are in a weak position, and the weak position comes from weapons. Uh, what I what I want to say is that two things. First, I don't believe that this dialogue will change much because Frelimo is not yet in a very weak position. They're just trying to get legitimacy and keep in power without reforms. And secondly, history tell us that all these changes in Mozambique will come through violence, but we have to find a way to a different alternative to make those reforms without violence. This political dialogue might be interesting because it's the first time in history of Mozambique that we have a so long, so formal period of dialogue. So this is positive, but I'm not naive. I think it's going to be difficult to change it, and the changes will come when the violence will fall in the streets. It, I would say that the next decades will be the biggest challenge in Mozambique history. It's the challenge. It's the decade where we will have to choose if we will become a failure state with riots in the streets, or if we have the courage, the political courage to do the necessary reforms. Just one final sentence. Mozambique is a very centralized state. And the one who gets to the one who controls the central government controls all the state resources, controls mines, controls lands, controls uh, 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 the pensions from the state, the salaries, the contracts, the jobs, controls everything. And we cannot imagine a different kind of country. Uh, we cannot, we are always speaking about decentralization, but it's a very, very challenging reform that I don't believe the ruling party will do. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope in 10 years you invite me here again and we discussed that I was totally wrong.
Yeah. Thank you, Doc. Good to have you and hope to have you in future
And
installments.
just one sorry, just one final comment. My friend Borges Nyamir gave already a very nice answer to Anthony Papo. I would just like to add that this kind of questions do not explain reality, but they explain the one who asked those questions and explain that they have a problem with citizenship. When we recognize that we have social problems, social exclusion problems, uh, uh, social contradictions in a society, we have to understand it as a legitimate way of social participation. We have to understand it as progressive suggestions with a sense of state. It's not necessarily to recognize that we have social problems and political problems in a country that every country have is not necessarily an hostile attitudes against the government. Thank you.
Thank you. Fidelia. Fidelia.
Hi, I'm here. Well, a lot has been said already. I'll maybe point out once again that imperfections around this process are many, and so is the level of mistrust. I heard someone mentioning the level of optimism that I have shown in this conversation. And for me, being optimist, it does not make me naive, but it makes me hopeful. And I think this is what we need as a country, as the people of Mozambique at this moment. At the end of the day, this process will generate reforms. This is 100% sure. But whether these reforms will correspond to our expectations is something that I cannot answer at this moment, at this stage. And as I was saying before, it is still too early to make any judgment from where we are now. There are political dynamics and interests at play, of course. Is it possible that the process may lead to other smaller or larger dialogues, perhaps of or more party political nature? Yes, it's possible. But again, at this point, I do not have enough elements or tools, I would say, to fully interpret those dynamics. We speak from where we are and based on who we are and our own experience. And I come from the civil society organization, so it might be possible that I don't have enough tools to read behind what I can see from my eyes. But at this point, as someone who is involved in the process, it's too early for me to make any judgment. I can anyway acknowledge methodological and approach-related imperfections. But again, I cannot say so far if these have already caused harm to the overall objective of the process. So what we need to do now is to remain vigilant as civil society organizations, as citizens in general, to be rigorous and proactive in monitoring, especially in monitoring the process, and uncompromising in demanding transparency and accountability. At this moment, different scenarios are being developed. For instance, I'm not sure if you are aware. So after the public hearings, we are now going back to communities to somehow get validation. So we are going back to the same places we have been before to validate what came out from the public hearings. And this is based on scenarios that were how do I say? So we after the public hearings, we drafted scenarios has code, and these scenarios are being validated at this moment and for the next 25 days. So in my opinion, it's important that this process remains open, credible, and responsive to the expectations of citizens. And it's also, again, important that as civil society, we don't lose these opportunities. So my personal opinion on the dialogue again is that we cannot evaluate the dialogue or its success based on the quality, on the number or the quality of the policies that we will end up having in our ends. For me, as a country, and Mozambique is very well known for being able to draft very good policies. So we have never lacked policies, reforms, or strategies. What has often been missing is the institutional behavior and the political commitment required to translate those policies and reforms into better services, reducing inequalities, and a stronger sense of social peace. So for me, this cannot again be judged solely by reforms that it produced by the ability to influence how institutions behave and how they respond to citizens' needs and priorities. Again, I said this in my previous interventions, the dialogue will not or cannot deliver medicines to hospitals directly, of course. But for me, the way we should look at it's if it can address the institutional governance and resource allocation challenge that will, at the end of the day, determine whether the health system functions effectively. And this includes, in my opinion, fiscal decentralization, accountability in public management, efficient use of resources, and the stronger state capacity. So again, the moment is critical for the country, and as we are validating, has quote the outcomes of the public hearing and consultations. If we do not assert ourselves now, we may lose the opportunity to influence the process at a larger stage. So I'm bringing this back, again, not being naive, but have someone who is from the inside can see a different picture. So from the outside, what people can see is the process. Me being there, I'm seeing faces, I'm seeing voices, I'm seeing contradictions. I'm also seeing possibilities. And again, not being naive, I think this is a special moment for the country, and we should, as civil society organization, make sure that there is a strong and a dynamic movement around dialogue, and that all groups and especially the most vulnerable of the most vulnerable are involved. I would like to end by saying that pointing out again that the most investment that we need at this moment is on the soft side. Again, changing the behavior of the institutions and making sure that this, at the end of the day, will promote institutional transformation. Yeah, so that's what I would leave as my last word. I wanted to only to point out, and Borja did say this before, all these accusations and discussions around civil society organizations being perceived as serving external agendas. This is, I mean, this is coming back. At times, it's framed as a question of foreign influence. At other times, organizations have been associated with terrorism, with money laundering, and many other allegations. This is not new, and regardless the basis, and for me, this is undermining trust in civil society and gradually eroding the space. We have been fighting. We fought the draconic law. We are now fighting other efforts to control the civic space, and I don't think this is intelligent. At this moment, I mean, I don't think it's intelligent to bring these narratives back at this very challenging and important moment in which we are involved. And well, I would end here again, thanking for the opportunity. I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fidelia. Quite very important inputs. And having listened to a number of civil society organizations in Mozambique and colleagues that have come to these platforms, My take is that as civil society, you might need to accept that there will be others who are participating, there will be others who are critiquing, but you need to see that as taking the process forward. That real success in the dialogue or other processes who come from insiders and outsiders, raising issues that you might not be able to raise from inside, but also seeing things that those outside might not be able. So there's to be a way of civil society coordinating, collaborating, having a strategy, and sharing notes, those that are in the process and those that are outside, so that in the end, you don't lose your view as civil society of the Mozambique you are trying to build. But I know that these are issues that you are engaged with. Custodio, please do come in.
Yes, thank you very much. It's very few now to be addressed, but my few words will be my concerns on this discussion on what is happening in the region. The governments that want to prolong their terms in power, and the last example from Zimbabwe, which is really concerning to many activists, including me. But coming to Mozambique, I had a question on that, but I don't think this is the discussion in our side. I didn't hear about that. Somehow involved in this national dialogue, and I never heard about a discussion to extend the terms of at least for the president. Of course, there are other ways of doing it because, our reality shows that we have elections every 5 years, and we have municipality elections too. We have mechanisms to involve civil society and the other groups, but the results are, just centered on one and a single part and the same people. So there are other issues that we can address on extending terms, not only by the constitutional timing, like from 5 to 7, but how we can include more in the case, like for example, to include more different people, different organizations, and the different political parties on how on daily life of the state. So, and the other thing also, I think that this may not be a discussion this time based on the last experience that we had with the last elections. I don't expect these people to to bring more issues that can raise again the same kind of violence that we had in 2024 by extending terms in power. So I'm expecting different, approach on this. Last, on this dialogue thing, I think I agree with what my colleagues were saying. But for me, for example, regarding this dialogue, political dialogue, I think we need to look at its contribution as gain itself. This process for me is the first time that is not only political parties are in table discussing. This time we have civil society, and we have the doors open from different mechanisms using online, and different groups can come to address the issues. They can even do their studies and bring the reports for this. It's the first time that more actors are included on the dialogue. So this is a gain for for I think in this point of view, if we look in this side. And for me also, it represents a kind of shift, as most sectors, including civil society, are not only participating with ideas, but as you can see, for example, Fidela is part of the table, is member of the technical for the technical commission, which is one of the good results for me, that we must not only concentrate on the final result, but we must also see what is happening for now. And if we can continue contribute on this process, if we can continue call the others to come with their ideas, with their reports, with their point of view to improve the dialogue that is happening, we may come to maybe a good result. Because the negative thinking of it will, reduce the participation of people. And with reducing the participation of civil society organizations at the other, of course, we will not come to a result that we are looking for. So as the mechanism is open, I think is opportunity to bring all and to continue discussing. If we keep on doing that, the results also, we may have good results coming. And my experience, for example, in human rights, being activist for the last 25 years, is that the gains are small. The gains are small and small and small. Then from, a certain time, we will see that what we have done from the long time past, now we have good results for that. It's not the same thing that we are talking about today as when we started at 2000, for example. We were very few people raising questions on human rights.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think let's close up. I'm seeing that our time is terrible, but sorry for cutting you. Yeah. Thanks so much. And I think it's a discussion that hopefully there are platforms you are creating for civil society internally to rethink your approaches and all these things. And but thank you so much for the input. Ambassador Zulu, parting shot.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll just start from where the two presenters ended. I liked what Fidelia said, that she's seeing people, she's seeing faces, she's seeing people, she's seeing possibilities. And what the last speaker also relates to is an encouragement to the dialogue. And he's seeing something new in the dialogue, in the inclusion, and everything else that he has said. So my point is that how do we then harness this process so that it has the positive impact that it needs to have, number one. Number two, how do we take the Mozambique dialogue, the Mozambique nasal dialogue, the South African nasal dialogue, do some comparisons between the two, because it's important, as I said earlier on, if the liberation movements are talking about best practices, where do their best practices fit in today? One of those is the dialogues that we are talking about. What are the lessons to be learned? It's also about communication, because what Comrade Mandis Mphahlwa is saying, when can we be let in? How do we know what is happening? What is coming out? Is it all under wraps? And these are the platforms where we should get another discussion that says this is where it is, these are the challenges that they're facing. And lastly, for me, I believe that it's just political courage and commitment to doing the right thing, not only by our leaders, but the NGOs, the NPOs, and also empowering people to be able to feel that they can protect this, they can participate fully and feel that it is really truly an inclusive dialogue. And I wish to thank you for having invited me here. I just want to say that in encouraging the inclusion, if you put the people at the center at all times, then you will have people having the confidence in what we are doing and creating a conducive environment for people to feel like they're part and parcel of everything. From a South African perspective and from my perspective, for instance, the Freedom Charter stands for in South Africa, it's still very relevant today. And I look at the Freedom Charter and I ask myself, what are the documents on the Mozambican side which are similar to the Freedom Charter that we can continue to say these are the bases from which we have to work? Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I know that we are late. I won't take time to try and sum up what came out of the dialogue. It is quite clear that there is a long way to really discuss the issues of Mozambique, and we need to continue to talk. We need to continue to knock on doors. We need to continue to rethink our approaches. And from me, just to say thank you to the colleagues for coming on board. I will allow my colleague Amatle to give some closing remarks. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Monjoti, and thank you all for joining us for what has been a thoughtful and engaging discussion. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all our panelists for sharing their time, expertise, and valuable insights with us. Your contributions have deepened our understanding of the opportunities and challenges surrounding Mozambique's evolving peace process and the important role that civil society, inclusive dialogue, and regional solidarity can play in supporting lasting peace and democratic resilience. I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us today and contributed to the discussion through your questions, comments, and reflections. The value of dialogue such as these lies in bringing together diverse perspectives to exchange ideas, challenge assumptions, and strengthen our collective understanding of them issues affecting our region. A special word of thanks goes to our chair, Munjoti Mutandiri, for guiding today's discussion with professionalism and ensuring an engaging and thought-provoking conversation. We would also like to express our sincere appreciation to our development partner, Irish Aid, for its continued support of SALO's work. Their commitment for supporting dialogue, democratic governance, and peace building in Southern Africa makes engagement such as today's possible, and we remain grateful for their partnership. Thank you all once again for joining us today. We hope you find the discussion both informative and engaging, and we look forward to welcoming you to future SALO dialogues. Have a wonderful afternoon and goodbye.
Colleagues.